Understanding and appreciating feminine energy. What does this mean for most men? Well, I'll admit that sometimes the way a woman behaves in a certain situation can be frustrating, especially if she's trying to slow down my goal-oriented ways. This happens in many different scenarios. But I will tell you a story from a couple days ago. I was in New York. I was buying a pair of shoes at this high-end boutique. I was with my girlfriend, and I was getting impatient. The shoes were very expensive, and I sometimes feel entitled to a discount just because of who I am. And I started to negotiate with the saleswoman, expecting a 10% off or something, and she wouldn't budge. And I started to get fairly aggressive in my language, saying, "Oh, I know how the economy is. Don't give me that. I want to talk to a manager." And she had been very helpful up until that point, and the product was beautiful. But I got into sort of a heated discussion and almost hostile. And she didn't budge, and I ended up buying the boots, but there was bad energy afterwards. And my girlfriend said to me, "I think this woman could do with an apology. You were out of line there." And because I was able to pocket my pride and realize, you know what, she's right. Actually, I did cross a line there. I didn't need to behave so much like a brute. I went and I apologized, and the transaction was completed. And some of the damage had already been done. I came off as a jerk. But my point is that I pause enough to allow this much more graceful and elegant woman who's in my life to say, you know what, this relationship was damaged, and you owe this woman an amends. And I made it and left, and we discussed it afterwards. And I appreciated, and I trust the girl in my life. I trust that she has good perspective on these kind of things, and I appreciate that she is taking everyone's point of view into consideration. I told her after, my point of view is that I got to get the best deal. It's about money focused. She said, yes, but you don't have to mow over other people. So my point there is that I appreciated her feminine posture, her patience, her value on the relationship, and I did the right thing.
I think there's a lot to be said for feminine energy and feminine instincts as really gelling well with the concept of good friendship. You know, women are so good at being friends to each other, in part because they have this natural inborn mothering instinct, bonding instinct, right? And it's how all their conversations go. We're concerned with getting to a conclusion, to a solution, reaching outward, solving a problem, reaching a goal. All of our conversations eventually, as guys, turn to what is the problem and what is the solution that we are going to execute together.
Right.
But with women, it's like they'll share just to share. They'll stop a conversation, mid topic and leave and return to it. And it's just all about the emotional bonding for them. So their feminine energy has a natural, let's say, diplomacy to it. In fact, I think in cultures that are peaceful, the feminine presence in those cultures, friendships between women, actually are stabilizing to the culture, anti-war, or at least counterbalancing warlike tendencies. And so in any social group, the feminine energy has that kind of high value too. And what your girlfriend there was doing is she was recognizing that and saying, hey, I have this feminine instinct that seeks harmony, and you've created discord. Even though it may have served you,
Right.
you might have gotten the discount. She was seeing the discord as being a negative, as opposed to getting the greatest deal
Right.
on the boots.
An exercise that could be helpful. I am a long-term people watcher. I remember I was in Switzerland a few years ago with a different girlfriend, and I was spending a week with her family, and I was down in Basel, Switzerland, at the main train station where everyone in that country rides the train. And at rush hour, tons and tons of people were coming and going, and I ran and her mother passed by and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm just observing people as they're going through their daily." And I've always loved to just watch people on their way to doing, when they don't know I'm watching them, observe how they behave.
Sort of like a peeping Tom.
Yeah, definitely.
International peeping Tom.
An international peeping Tom. These particular subjects had their clothes on. But yeah, there's a voyeuristic element for sure. And one little exercise that could be beneficial is to watch a group of women around a table at brunch and see how they interact, and then turn and look at a group of men and watch how they interact and see the differences. And I bet you'd pick up on some startling differences. The women, as you were saying, probably seek harmony. There's an overarching goal to include everyone and hear all the points of view, and that in itself is satisfying to the women. To just have that flow of conversation, that brings a lot of positive emotion, shared positive emotion to the group, and that's why they're friends. And you might look at a table of guys, and the dynamic is probably different. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I can imagine it's very different than a group of women over brunch.
Well, if you compare, one angle on the core instincts of what it is to be masculine and what it is to be feminine, men actually actively seek out differentiating themselves from the crowd. They want to belong to it in a teamwork kind of way, but simultaneously they want to be different. They want to be unique. They want to be the number one at something. But with women, the opposite is true.